Welcome back. Today we are going to talk about the fun topic of taxes. Today we have a very special guest, a good friend of mine, my firm's CPA partner and owner of Ryan Levy CPAs. Ryan Levy, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to first jump into your background in accounting. What's your history in the accounting industry?
So I've been in the industry just over 16 years now. Started out of college with KPMG here in Baltimore. Spent a little time there and then went out to San Diego with two good buddies of mine and lived there for about 7 years. And while there, I worked with a niche tax firm there that worked on ultra high net worth individuals and families. Some of that was athletes, celebrities, different types of returns that I wasn't used to seeing, but a really good experience and exposure to that type of work. Ultimately made it back to the East Coast and eventually went on my own just over a year and a half ago at this point, and focused mainly on individual small business groups, service businesses, and clients with a little more complexity to it.
That's great. Tell me about your history working with your sports clients. I know that when they play games in different states, they're going to have multiple different tax returns. Kind of tell me about that process.
So yeah, it's a very complex procedure. So every state is a little bit differently on how they tax athletes, and even within states such as Pennsylvania, they may tax baseball, hockey, basketball players differently than they tax football players. So football players will be taxed in Pennsylvania based on the amount of days worked in the state, whereas a baseball player is taxed on the number of games played in the state over the total games played in the season. So even within a state, there's complexities among the different sports. So every state does it a little bit differently. The rules are constantly changing. It can generate notices to some of the athlete clients. A lot of states send out notices assuming the taxes are due, and it's really on the business team and the CPAs to really prove, the validity or invalidity of some of these notices. So it's almost a full-time job doing some of these clients.
So it sounds like a CPA is really a pivotal role in the athlete's financial team, making sure that everything is kept track of, really. What sort of things do players need to think about for tax planning of future years?
So future years, most athletes are going to have other sorts of income other than their W-2 that they're receiving from the sports team. So they'll have endorsement and sponsorship deals. There's a lot of tax planning around those things to offset some of the income with expenses, paid for various things. So really just having a good CPA and team on your side to be able to understand the rules and help reduce some of that tax liability. A big part of it is really where they live, their domicile. A lot of athletes are going to live in a non-tax state like a Texas, a Florida, Nevada. That could really help you save thousands or millions of dollars, even depending on the size of some of these deals. But just structuring it appropriately, making sure you're a true resident of a state and documenting it, doing everything you can to make sure that you save as much as you possibly can.
That's really helpful information. One thing that everyone always asks and is kind of at the forefront of everyone's thought is, what are ways to minimize a player's tax burden?
So some of the ones we just mentioned, your domicile, so living in a state like Texas where there's no state income tax, really could save you a lot of money on some of that endorsement and sponsorship deal income. Also, just understanding the rules about state tax credits. So if I'm a Maryland resident but have worked in Pennsylvania, they have a reciprocity agreement. So I don't have to pay Pennsylvania taxes. I pay just Maryland taxes. So there's a lot of agreements like that out there with various states. It's just understanding what's out there, applying it to your situation, and being able to save, having a team on your side that's looking out for these opportunities and presenting it to you before it's too late.
That's really great information. I think we'll end it with that before we get into too much of the weeds, but thank you so much for your time, and I hope to have you back on soon.
Thanks for having me.